Now we are going to talk about the iterator. So in the last lecture, we have we have been trying to create the sequence type. So actually we are trying to create a collection data types, right? And then we have discussed about the next method. But there was some downside of using the next method. First downside was we were not able to use for loop. And the second problem was once we exhausted the iterations, right, we are done with that object, right? So if so, the next time when we iterate over the same object, we'll have to create a new instance. We are not able to get the value over here, or we were able to get the error. So we had the two problems. Now first we are going to take a look at how our next function or next method can be useful in a for loop. The idea of using next and the stop iteration is exactly what the Python does. That means next method will give you the next object, and stop iteration exception will kind of stop the iterations, right? When the object is not available, right? So now let's create the iterator type object. So what is the iterator type object? So if the object has the both method implementation, that is the next method and the iter method implementation, then that object is called the iter object or iter type object. So the next method we already know, it will give you the next element, and this iter method which simply return the object itself. That is what the iter method is. It simply gives you the same object, it simply returns you the same object, right? So iter method has two methods, iter and the next. Now let's try to check our square sequence type or our square collection data type. So here we have this class square, we have this init method. Now we have implemented the iter method over here, which takes the self and return the same object itself. And then we have the next method. Now this code is very much familiar from the earlier classes, right? We are only adding these two line of code. That's it. Now now let's try to run this. Now now we can still call the next method, right? So we can call first, we are getting the object. We are calling the next method. Every time we'll get the new object, so the new element from the collection type. So of course our iters still suffer from not being able to reset. That means like if we'll get the new object, like if the that means if this criteria matches, we'll get the stop iterations, right? Again, after that you will have to create the new object again. So here let's create a new object. Now let's try to use in a for loop. Now this for loop is working now. So because of this iter method we have implemented, now our for loop is working over here. Now again, now this sq is exhausted because all the object we have printed. So if we try again, a for loop, we'll get nothing. We'll get none. No item will be returned, right? So now we need to create a new, because if you want to use it in a for loop, we'll have to create again the same object, right? So that is what is happening over here. Now again we can use the for loop, right? Now as we have discussed that iter method returns the object itself. So the ID of this object, like here we are getting the instance of the class. So ID is this. So ID we are saying is this one. And when we call the iter object, this will return you the same object, right? Iter method will return you the same sequence object, right? So when we call the iter method, we can check the ID, and the ID is same. So this is from the iter method. We can also like similar to the iter method, we have the iter function, which will give you the same output or the same object. This will also return in the same object, so the ID will be same, right? So now this has confirmed that iter method or the iter function return you the same object, right? We can also use this object, or we can also, because we have implemented the iter method, we can also use in all the type of, like in all the places where we require the iterable as an argument. That means if the object is iterable, if the object has the iter method implementation, that means that object will be, or that object that will create, it will be called iterator, or any iterator is the iterable type of data, right? So here we are getting a new object we are using in a list comprehension. Here we are using in the enumerate function. Like if we'll again do this, we are not going to get the same result. We'll get the empty list over here. Why? Because all the object has been exhausted over here, right? So if we'll do it again, like if we'll create new object and again run it, we'll get the out. We can even do the sorting. We can even apply the, like, pass this iterable object to the sorted function. We'll get the output, right? So as a summary, iterator are the object that implement in the iter and the next method, right? Iter method of the iterator just return the object itself, right? And what we know that once we fully iterate over the iterator, that means the iterator is exhausted. We are no longer to get the new element from that iterator, right? And the way Python use the for loop is the similar to what we have implemented in the while and the stop iteration, like combination of while and the stop iteration exception. Like here we have this, like we have this while loop. Every time we will call the next function, and the like when we are not able to call the next the new element, that means when the stop iteration happens, right? So that means if you are no longer to get the new object, it will call the stop iterations, right? Now, in fact, like if you change our method a little bit, we can see that how iter and next method is being called. So first, in the iter method, we are printing the calling iter, and the next method we are printing calling next. So we have just added two line in these two methods, just to check how the iter and the next method calls itself. Let's run this, and we create the object here. And when we use for loop, now this, remember, this for loop was possible after the implementation of the iter method, and this iter method means returning the object itself. So when we use for loop, what we can see is first it call the iter method, and then after, so first it call the iter method. That means it has created a, it has returned the object itself, and then after it is returning the next method every time until we have reached. And after we have reached, again we have called the next method, but we were not able to get the output over here. We can see that, right? So after we call the next method, so here we are calling the next method, we fill this criteria, and then we have reached, here we have reached the stop iterations, right? Now we can also see this calling of iter and the next method in the list comprehension as well. We can check that. First we call the iter method, so that now it can be iterated and done, and then we are calling the next method every time. Here in the enumerate as well, we are calling the iter and the next method. We can also check this in the sorted method. So every time it happens the same thing, right? Now why the iter is being called, we'll talk about this later on, right? But here we are trying to mimic how Python is being doing. So again, so what Python is being doing till now, it is calling the iter method first, and then it is calling the next method every time. That means when we create the object, so first we have called the iter method. That means we are calling the iter functions. The equivalent method is the iter method. We are calling the iter function. We are storing whatever the output we are getting from the iter function. We are storing this in the sq iter variables. Now we are trying to check the ID of sq object and the sq iter variable. We should get the same ID. Why? Because both are the same object. And then every time we are calling the next method. Here we can check that ID are same over here, right? and the same again after that. So here what we are saying is after we get the iterator, here we are getting the iterator. That means we have created the iterator object. And now we are calling the next method on the iterator. This is what is happening, right? So first we create the iterator and then we are calling the iterator every time. And that's how we are able to achieve our for loop situations, right? And that's it. That's it about the how the iterator work and how to create the iterator object. Thank you very much.